They called it a defensive alliance. 2,500 years ago, I watched every empire in history say the same thing, right before they started the war they claimed they were preventing. Here's what no one on your screen will tell you. NATO is not making the world safer. NATO is executing, move by move, the exact strategic error that has collapsed every dominant power in history. And the consequences are already in motion. I wrote about this. I warned about this. The principle is simple and merciless. When you encircle an enemy without the strength to finish him, you do not create peace. You create the conditions for a war larger than the one you feared. Watch carefully, because what is unfolding right now is not a new story. It is the oldest story in the history of power, and it ends the same way every single time. The alliance that was built to prevent the next world war may be the very mechanism creating it. Subscribe, because what I am about to show you, no news channel, no think tank, no government briefing will ever explain. In 1949, 12 nations signed a treaty in Washington. The premise was clean. An attack on one is an attack on all. A shield, not a sword. That was the promise. Today, NATO has 32 members. Its military infrastructure sits on the borders of Russia from the Arctic to the Black Sea. It has absorbed every buffer state that once separated the great powers of Europe: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria. And it is not finished. Now understand what this looks like from the other side of the border. Russia shares a land border with 16 countries. NATO now controls or influences the majority of them. From Moscow, the strategic picture is not of a defensive alliance. It is of a slowly closing perimeter, a noose tightening one expansion at a time. In response, Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, annexed Crimea in 2014, launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Each move condemned by the West as unprovoked aggression. And each move, when viewed through a strategic lens rather than a moral one, follows a predictable logic. A cornered power striking outward before the circle closes completely. Meanwhile, China watches from the east. Iran watches from the south. North Korea accelerates its nuclear program. And in Washington, the debate is not whether to expand, but how fast. Three separate powers in three separate theaters, all drawing the same conclusion at the same time. That conclusion is the mistake I have been waiting to reveal. I wrote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat." NATO knows itself. It does not know its enemy. And that ignorance is now structural. Here is the broken rule. You do not push an adversary into a corner unless you are prepared to destroy him completely. Half encirclement is not deterrence. Half encirclement is provocation without resolution. It is the worst position in strategy. You have angered the enemy, but you have not disarmed him. Rome made this error with Carthage 3 times. The first 2 wars weakened Carthage enough to make it dangerous, but not enough to make it finished. It was only in the Third Punic War that Rome understood there is no such thing as a permanently contained enemy. You either defeat him completely, or you give him time to adapt, ally, and return. NATO has been fighting the Third Punic War without ever deciding to fight it. Now watch what the cornered powers do. Russia bonds with China in an economic and military partnership that would have been unthinkable in 2010. Iran supplies drones to Russia and deepens ties with Beijing. North Korea sends artillery shells to a European war. These are not coincidences. These are the natural alliances of encircled powers, exactly what I warned about when I wrote, "Make your enemy fight on many fronts, but never create the conditions where your enemies do the same to you." NATO expanded to prevent a Russian threat. It has instead assembled a coalition against itself. They think they are containing a threat. They have manufactured an alliance. So what would I have done? What does the master's move look like when the board is this complex? First, you do not expand an alliance until you have decided what the alliance is for. NATO was built to deter Soviet aggression. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. At that moment, a wise strategist asks one question: does the threat still exist? Or am I about to turn a defensive structure into an offensive one simply by leaving it in place? The answer to that question determines everything that follows. I wrote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." NATO had that opportunity in 1991. Russia was economically collapsed, politically fragmented, and strategically desperate for integration with the West. Boris Yeltsin himself applied for NATO membership. He was refused. That refusal was the decisive error. Not because Russia deserved membership, but because a Russia inside the Western architecture is a Russia that cannot build a coalition against it. You do not neutralize an enemy by pushing him away. You neutralize him by pulling him into a structure where his interests align with yours. Instead, NATO expanded eastward 14 times in 30 years, while promising Moscow it would not move 1 inch in that direction. I have seen emperors lose their thrones for lesser betrayals of stated intent. The master's move was integration, not encirclement. Economic interdependence, not military pressure. Make Russia a stakeholder in the Western order, and you make a Russian attack on that order an act of self-destruction. They chose the road that felt stronger. It was the road that created the war. Here is what comes next, and I do not guess. I apply principles that have held for 2,500 years. NATO is now caught in the strategist's worst trap. Too committed to retreat, not strong enough to finish. Ukraine bleeds. European defense budgets strain. American political will fractures. And on the other side, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea deepen a cooperation that was unimaginable a decade ago. Each passing month of this war is a month those four powers spend learning to operate together, economically, militarily, diplomatically. The West is not facing Russia. The West has maneuvered itself into facing a coalition. And coalitions, once formed under pressure, are very difficult to dissolve without a decisive victory by one side. I wrote, "In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. That opportunity now belongs to those who were pushed into alliance, not to those who pushed them there." What can you take from this into your own life, your own conflicts? Never push an adversary into a corner unless you are ready to finish the fight completely. A wounded enemy with no exit is not a defeated enemy. He is a desperate one. And desperation produces the kind of moves that nobody planned for. In your business, your career, your relationships, when you feel the urge to encircle, to pressure from all sides, stop. Ask yourself, am I prepared to finish this completely? If not, leave an exit. Give them a way to retreat with dignity. Because an enemy with no exit will fight with everything he has. The alliance that was built to prevent the next world war may be the very mechanism creating it. And the first rule of war, the one nobody ever remembers until it is too late, is this: the most dangerous moment is not when your enemy is strong. It is when you have made him believe he has nothing left to lose. If this changed how you see the world, subscribe. The next move is already on the board.